Are you ready to boost your confidence when selling so you're able to close more deals? Nikki Rausch will show you how to build a foundation of skills and a mindset that creates sales success without feeling pushy or salesy and without fear of rejection. She is a sales strategist and coach with more than 25 years of sales experience and is master certified in neuro-linguistic programming. This is a radically different approach to selling. It's a no sleaze, no slime, and no stress approach to building your business. This is Sales Maven. Here's Nikki.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I am your host, Nikki Rausch, your own personal sales maven, here to offer you tips, strategies, and techniques to master that sales conversation. Today's episode, I am going to be sharing with you some of my biggest sales fails. It's so interesting how sometimes it's nice to know that other people make mistakes. And I was talking with a friend of mine, Elizabeth Hartke. Elizabeth, if you don't know her, she has the Scaling Up podcast, and she's brilliant. And in a conversation that we were having, it was probably a couple months ago, she was sharing some suggestions and some ideas for me. And she had said then, Nikki, be interesting if you did a podcast episode on your biggest fails as far as a salesperson, especially because sometimes people tend to hold you kind of on a pedestal. Not that I belong there by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes people think, oh, well, Nikki's been doing sales for so long, she never makes mistakes, or, she knows exactly what to say and what to do in every situation, which of course is not true, right? So I loved her idea, and I've been sitting on it for a while and decided today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to share with you some of my biggest fails as far as the sales go. I will say I could probably do like a whole podcast on all of my fails in life and in business. And we're going to focus on the sales stuff today. I also had some inspiration around this. I want to give credit where credit is due. So in addition to Elizabeth Hartke, I also want to give some credit to my brilliant mentor, somebody who I just absolutely love, is Natalie Eckdahl of Chix. If you don't know the Chix podcast, and it's BIZCHIX. If you haven't listened to the Chix podcast, I would highly recommend it. One of my favorite all-time episodes is Natalie. It's a solo episode, and it's called Everyone's a Mess. It's episode 320 from her podcast. So you might check it out. I remember when she launched that podcast, I think it was a couple summers ago, and I was driving in my car and I just felt like she was talking right to me, being so candid and vulnerable, some of the things that really draw me to Natalie. So again, these are my inspirations. Elizabeth Hartke, Natalie Eckdahl, thank you so much, both of you, for being in my life. And I feel really honored to have you here. By the way, if you want to catch me on Elizabeth's podcast, I have been on that. I'm on episode 53, and I've been on two episodes on Natalie's podcast, The Biz Chick. So I want to say it's 312. 312 is one of them. And the other one, I'm sorry, I'll have to look it up. I'll put it in the show notes, what the other episode is. But go check those out. Those are some of my favorite interviews with some of my favorite people. Okay, so let's get into these sales fails. And I want to share too some of the lessons learned. I am a work in progress. I like to describe myself as a lifelong learner. And I say that with a laugh in my voice because I'm always learning, and sometimes I make the same mistakes over and over again. There's a quote. I'm trying to think if this is a Chinese proverb or like a Buddha quote. I think it's a Chinese proverb. And it says, if one knows but doesn't do, one does not truly know. So I always find when I'm making the same mistake over and over, I just think like, I obviously truly do not know this yet. And there's some learning to be had here. So these are my life lessons, my sales fails and life lessons. So when I was thinking back, I was trying to think of like, what was one of my biggest first ones as a sales professional? This was in the probably mid to late 90s in my first professional sales job at a corporate level. And I was selling, we primarily sold over the phone back then. And so I had a territory that I worked specifically in the education market and selling technology and doing a lot of cold calling, And I remember getting this call one day that came in from somebody. And so the first thing I was asked is, have you spoke with anybody at our company before? This person said yes. So I asked for their name and I was going to look them up in our database. They gave me their first and last name and it was like Denise, I'm just going to say Smith. I don't remember what the last name was, Denise Smith. So I go and look it up and I find the school district and I'm looking through all of the contacts at the school district in our database and I see the last name and the first name though is Dennis. And I go, oh, it's so interesting. Is there anybody at your school or in your organization with the first name Dennis and same last name as you? And the person on the phone actually their voice changed and they said, it used to be Dennis in this really deep husky voice. So it was really surprising. So she'd given me her name as Denise and then said Dennis. Now keep in mind, this was back in the mid to late 90s. I grew up in a small town, wasn't used to this. And I was so stunned and shocked. Like I didn't really know what to say. And I count this as a sales fail because I think in sales, you really do need to be prepared for the unexpected and you need to be able to keep your like calm, cool composure, no matter what happens. You may have heard me talk about this. I think I talked about this in an earlier episode. My NLP teacher used to always say to me, Nikki, be the swan. No matter what happens, be the swan. Because if you think about a swan like glides across the top of the water, like barely making a ripple. Swans are so elegant. And I don't know, to me, it's like poised and just really like hold this mystique and just calm, cool, collected. But underneath the water, the swan's, little feet might be paddling like heck. And that's all fine. But above the water, it's like barely making a ripple. So in this particular case, when the person said, Denise, and then said Dennis, and I think I was so stunned, I really didn't know what to say. And I started like fumbling my words and realized, and we ended up like, I got the information to the person that was, got the information that the person was asking for. And then we had scheduled like a follow-up call. And when I called, never was able to get this person back on the phone. And I count this as one of my biggest sales fails because I realized I did not keep my composure. I let it kind of trip me up a little bit. And not that, believe me, like I don't have any type of weird feelings about whether somebody's name is Denise or Dennis, or, this isn't about my feelings about transgender or anything like that. It's just that ability to keep your cool. So it was such a great lesson for me because, my biggest fear was that I made the other person feel uncomfortable. And it wasn't that I was uncomfortable about their situation. I just was uncomfortable. I didn't know what to say next. So these are those moments that I take with me in my sales career and have taken with me and still try to move into my life of like, when the unexpected happens, be the swan, be calm, cool, and collected. Don't let it faze you. Don't let it be a big deal. And sometimes when you act as if it isn't a big deal, people just go right along with you. As a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day. It was a client. And she shared some news that hasn't been announced publicly. This person has in the network of people that I'm involved with, this was kind of big news. And so it hasn't been announced yet. I'm not going to share what it is, obviously. Probably by the time this airs, everybody would know, but I'm still not going to share it. It's not my news to share. And so shared some news with me and I was like, oh, okay. And then just kind of kept on with the conversation. And she was like, wait, did you already know this? And I said, oh no, I didn't know it. She said, well, you didn't have much of a response. And I was like, well, that's because this is your session. And me having a big response to what the information is that you just shared, that would be me making it about me. So stay calm, cool, and collected. So sometimes it can throw people for a loop because I can stay a little bit more calm, cool, and collected now in, 25 years into my sales career than I could do in my early 20s. But so that's, one of my sales fails. Continue to learn, right? Okay, here's another one. This was also when I was back in the corporate sales arena. And this was a huge lesson for me. So to give you a little bit of background information, so at the time I was working for a large manufacturer, and my role as a regional sales manager was to go out and support our dealer reps and distributors in the marketplace. And then they would sell our equipment to the end customer. So there was multiple levels. So my job was to go out with the sales reps that worked at the dealer, offices, my customers, go out with them and meet with their customers and support them in the field. And there was a school district that we were working with. So oftentimes when I talk about my career in the technology space, the biggest purchaser of technology in the world is the education market. So I sold a lot into the education market. And the company that I was working for at the time, we had a product that was going end of life. So that means the product was going away. They were coming out with a newer kind of upgraded model. And so sometimes when you have end of life product, it's an opportunity to make a pretty aggressive deal. So as a end customer, and in this case, the school district, it was an opportunity for them to get just like a rockin' deal on hundreds. I think it was 750 units. So I was selling projectors at the time. Projectors, nowadays, you don't see them as much, as often. Like everybody uses flat screens now, but this was back when selling projectors. So it was 750 units going into the school district. Because the product was going end of life, we had made a deal with the school district that we were going to hold this 750 units for them to give them time to cut their purchase orders and get them over to us. And we'd been sitting on them for like a month and the purchase orders weren't coming through. And so my boss got on the phone with me and he's like, look, we have another customer that will take these units. And you need to either get these orders or you need to release this product because we don't want to be having 750 projectors sitting in the warehouse and it be too far past the end of life. It's going to make it hard for us to resell them. We're not going to make as much money on them, all these things. And I remember I actually got into a little bit of a heated discussion with my boss. I had this really amazing boss and we got into a heated discussion and I was like, look, do not sell those, out from under this customer. I've made commitments to this customer. So please don't, sell these. And he was like, okay, you have a week. You need to figure this out. You have a week. So I called my dealer rep and said, we need to go and have a meeting with this end customer because I have a week now to get these purchase orders in and close out this deal or we're going to have to release them. And even my dealer rep was like, don't release them. Both of us wanted this big sale. This was hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we go in to meet with the end customer, the head of the school district, the head of their technology division. And he comes into the room and he sits down and we start just having some, rapport building, chit chat. And then pretty soon 3 other people come into the room and they're kind of off by themselves and they kind of sit down away from where we're sitting at the table. And so I don't really understand the dynamic. And he introduces them as people in his, fellow people in his department. But he doesn't really explain why are they in the meeting. So I don't know why they're in the meeting. All I can think about is I need to have this very candid conversation with this person to find out when are we going to get these purchase orders? Because I need to let my boss know today after my meeting what's going on. And so we start, so he's like, okay, well, let's go ahead and start the meeting. And he does introduce us to these 3 other people. They were young, fairly young. I was fairly young in this industry that I was in. So, they were younger than I was. So I was probably in my, I don't know, early 30s at the time. So they were maybe late 20s. And so he says, okay, well, let's get the meeting started. So I take control of the meeting because I'm here to close this deal. And so I start talking about, okay, so we've got these projectors for you. They're ready to ship. We'd like to start shipping them next week. And we just need to finalize the purchase order from you. And he takes his eyes off me and he looks over at this young woman who's sitting in the room. And he just kind of looks at her and like waits for her to speak up. And so I look at her and she says, I don't know why you think you have this order. This is not a done deal. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean this isn't a done deal? And she's like, well, so-and-so hasn't told you yet, but he's retiring and I'm taking over this position and I will be deciding who we're going to do business with. And I've already decided it's not your company. And I was like, wait, like we had a verbal agreement, but I'm trying to keep my cool in this particular moment. And, I did okay, frankly, keeping my cool. But what I didn't do, and here's the lesson, is I didn't understand going into that meeting who these people were. And I should have handled it differently. Now, would I have gotten the order? I don't know. But I kind of took charge of the meeting and I really shouldn't have. I should have sat back. I should have done some due diligence and really understood the dynamic and why these people were in the meeting in a nice way. I'm not asking that directive question, but really having a better understanding of who was I talking to. Because turns out I wasn't giving much attention to who was going to be the decision maker. And we did lose the sale, which wasn't good for me and my boss. He was pretty upset with me, frankly, because he had, had this other customer who wanted to buy them and we had told them no. So lesson learned here, understand who's in the meeting, Nikki, right? Like understand the dynamics. It's so important. And even when sometimes people act as if like they're the main decision maker, there is a way to check to see like what's going on. I actually teach this. I don't recommend saying to somebody like, so who's the decision maker? Because that can kind of put people off. That can make them go like, well, why would you assume I'm not, right? And especially if they're not involved in the decision and if they have any kind of angst or resentment around it, you don't want to diminish them. So one of the things that I recommend that people ask is I will say, now, whom besides yourself is going to be participating in the decision-making process? Because I want to give respect to the person I'm in conversation with. And I also want to check to see who else is involved here. So, fast forward a couple years after we lost that contract, we lost that school district. They actually went with our competitor. So for the rest of my career at the company I was with, I never could get back into that school district. But I did make an effort to continue to build rapport with this young woman. So every time I would be at a trade show and she was there, I would go out of my way to talk to her, out of my way to build rapport with her. And so when I went to work for a different company with a different product line, she was amenable to taking a meeting with me, which we then ended up earning that business. And so I was able to kick a competitor out of this school district and bring my product in, because even when you lose a deal, the biggest, most important thing is to always keep that relationship going, because you never know where are you going to be in a year or where are they going to be in a year. So I always try to set myself up for success and the other person, leave those good lines of rapport and communication open, because things change. And even though I lost their deal, for the one manufacturer, I was able to get it and the next company that I went to work for. So that's my little lesson there. Let's see. A third one that I was thinking about. I have a few. I have a lot. So hopefully this is interesting to you and these lessons learned. Fast forward a few years, still in my corporate sales career, I went to work for a company who was feeding the sales reps information. It was a fairly new product. And frankly, it was a very revolutionary product on the market. There was nothing else like it. And it was a startup company, but it had this technology that nobody else had. And it made us really unique in the marketplace. And because I'm so committed to building strong relationships, that was kind of what I was known for. And still, I mean, it's still very much a part of what I teach my clients now, because my success has been built on these relationships. So a lot of times I would build relationships, obviously at the dealer level. So selling at a manufacturer level with the dealer, who was my actual customer. And then their customers I would build relationships with. And there was a consultant that I had built this relationship with back like 2 companies prior to what I was working for at the time. And I was, because this was a new product, it was revolutionary. There was nothing else like it on the marketplace. I was reaching out to my old contacts to see if they had opportunity for us to put our product in there, because, the best thing about being revolutionary is like, there's nothing else like it on the market. The worst thing is, because there's nothing else like it on the market, nobody knows about it sometimes. It takes a while to build, kind of word of mouth. And this startup company didn't have big budgets or anything like that. So I had reached back out to this consultant to see if he would give our product a chance, like if he would let me come in and talk with him about it, which he did because we had a good relationship. And he said, I have this opportunity that I think your product would fit into, and I'm willing to recommend it, but I want I want you to guarantee me, Nikki, like this isn't, I'm not going to burn a bridge here with my client. Like I need to know this product is going to work. So I had gone back to my boss, and I'd even spoken with one of our engineers about it, the project that he had. I was, reassured, yes, Nikki, this is totally going to work. No problem. It'll, there's like this 100%, we feel confident. So I went back to him, 100%, I am confident this is definitely going to work for you. Give me this chance to earn this business. So he did. We got the business. And as soon as the product got installed, they started having problems. So of course, I'm back on the phone with my audio engineer, asking him to get on a plane to fly out, to go into this end customer location and figure out like how we could fix it. So my engineer goes in and says, yeah, this isn't going to work. They need to pull this all out. And I was like, wait, what? I mean, this was probably maybe $150,000 worth of equipment. Like it's not going to work. They need to pull it out. And frankly, they didn't, give us all the information. So it's on them. They just need to eat it. And I was like, wait a minute. No, that's not going to work. Like, this guy took my word for it. I was taking the word of the company that I was working for. And, I only worked for this company for about 2 years. And over the course of the 2 years, they kept kind of changing things up. Like they would tell us like, the battery life of this product is, you'll never have to replace the batteries. And then 6 months later, they're like, oh, the battery life of this product is now 5 years, just 5 years. Okay, now we roll this out to our clients. And then, 6 months later, they're like, turns out that these batteries are kind of like any batteries and you can't really guarantee. So even though we said we have lifetime guarantee on the batteries, like we're removing that. And even though we said we had 5 years life on this product, we're going to, batteries, we're going to remove that too. And so needless to say, it wasn't going well. And this was a big one. So as you can imagine, my contact, the consultant, was really hot under the collar after speaking with the engineer. And because my engineer, frankly, didn't handle it very well. He kind of just said like, this is your fault. And my engineers or the consultant, my customer was like, no, this isn't my fault, but when you get into that kind of game, there's no winning, right? So he gets on the phone with me and he happens to get me at the end of the day. I'm probably not my best self in that moment. I'm tired. I was on the road traveling and I was frustrated. I was frustrated that I went to work for a company that I felt like they kind of left me like hanging out to dry here, and they were leaving my client out to dry. And there was nothing that I could do. It's not like I had $150,000 to like buy back this equipment. And so he was basically screaming at me on the phone, like threatening me and screaming at the phone, like on the phone with me, which, I wasn't being my best self in this moment. So I started to get a little offended. I kept trying to like manage the situation, but he just kept screaming and, telling me I was a liar and that I had, cost him all this business and cost him all this money and how he could never trust me again. And, and I didn't intentionally lie. I took the information that I had, but it turns out that the information that my company gave me was not accurate. So in this moment, I remember having a reaction to him screaming at me. And I think I know I did. I raised my voice back to him and screamed back, like, stop threatening me. I'm going to hang up on you if you don't stop threatening me. And I will say that was the end. I think I could have come back in our relationship, never with the company that I was working for, but I think there was still an opportunity for me to try to earn back his trust, because I didn't lie. I gave him the information that I had. I think I could have probably salvaged the relationship at some point over some time. But by me having a big reaction back and screaming back at the client, that pretty much cemented that was it. He never wanted to hear from me again. He was never going to take a call from me again. And we kind of left it. I can't even remember what he said to me last, but it was not nice. There was some cursing involved, and that pretty much ended our relationship. And here's the lesson that I learned. As a salesperson, you have to build relationships that are outside of the company. And yes, you want to be loyal to your company, but when you start to get an inkling that things are maybe not all that they're cracked up to be, that relationship between you and the customer has to come first. Not that there's anything I could have done in this particular moment, but I should have just taken it. I should have just let him have his big response and not responded in kind. And frankly, anytime you shouldn't really respond in kind. So that was a good lesson for me as a sale. That was a huge sales fail. It was a huge sales fail in many situations, like in many levels as far as what happened. And my response, me getting hot under the collar back at him when he had every right to be upset. Now, did he have every right to scream and, yell obscenities at me? No. But he was mad, and he had reason to be mad, and me being mad back and screaming back at him definitely didn't help the situation. So that was my lesson learned. Even when I feel like I want to defend myself in some way, having that type of response back is never going to earn back the relationship. So if you want to kill a deal, if you want to kill a relationship, then have that type of response back. If you want to salvage it at some point, you're better off keeping your cool. That's the lesson that I learned in that particular one. So it was a hard lesson to learn, but huge sales fail on my part, on the part of my company, frankly, and ruined a relationship. Still to this day, I've never, ever been able to get him back on the phone. I've never been able to make things right between us. I haven't tried in a while, frankly, but it was pretty much done deal. I think he was kind of like, I hope you catch fire and die was pretty much the end result. So never going to salvage that relationship. My mistake. I should have just kept my cool. All right. Now here's another one that, I have to say, it feels very vulnerable to reveal all these big sales fails to you. But here's another one that was a really good lesson for me. This was when I first started my company. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I even really had Sales Maven yet, but it was one of the first big speaking gigs it was a paid speaking gig. The client flew me out to another state to speak at their conference. And what happened was there wasn't a lot of communication between myself and the person who hired me to come out. And she had sent me kind of a vague message about kind of next steps, like what was I supposed to do when I got there and what time were we going to test the equipment and did I need to test the equipment? It was a very vague message. And where I dropped the ball, frankly, is that I should have been more specific. I should have initiated, but I was feeling like, well, maybe I shouldn't be asking all these questions because I don't want her to think that I don't know what I'm doing. And because I didn't ask enough questions, it turns out that when I showed up for the presentation, the tech guy didn't know how to make my computer work with their projector, which is very common for Mac users. And somebody who, like, again, I sold this technology. So I always know people always blame it on the computer. It's rarely the computer issue. It's usually that the tech person doesn't know how to set it up and he wouldn't let me touch it. So it caused a delay in their meeting because we couldn't get the equipment to work. Now, knowing what I know, like there was no excuse for me to have not tried to initiate a setup with their people before I was supposed to go on stage. So it didn't cause a delay. The other thing that happened is I had asked her, like, what was the, what's the attire for this event? And she said, oh, it's very casual. And so in addition to having this delay with the tech, I did dress somewhat professional, but I'm going to say I dressed like business casual. And after the event, when it was time for them to pay me money, here's the other lesson I learned in there is I didn't ask them to pay me up front, and I should have. When I asked them to pay me money, they kept like postponing it. Oh, we'll have the check out to you next week. And oh, well, we'll have the check out to you the week after. And then it was like 2 weeks out. And then at some point after I was like, hey, it's time to pay me. What's going on? She came back and said, we feel uncomfortable paying you, Nikki, because, you delayed our meeting and we didn't think you were dressed professionally enough for our conference. Now, so here's the lessons learned. One, I should have initiated and set up and done this presentation, like tried out my presentation before it was time for me to take the stage. My mistake for sure. The other mistake and lesson learned is I should have asked for at least half of the money up front so they had some skin in the game. And then I probably should have clarified and or just frankly like upped my game as far as what I wore on stage so that she didn't have any way to like make a comment about what I was wearing. Which I will say, at the time it really crushed me. Like I almost decided to not do my business after that because I had to fight so hard to get the money. I had to, I felt like I was kind of torn apart about my outfit, and I felt like I'd made a mistake by not like being able to start the meeting on time because there was a tech issue. So all of these things, amount to a sales fail. A sales fail because I should have done more due diligence. I should have taken more control. And frankly, like I ended up hiring a stylist not too long after that who now helps me dress because it doesn't come naturally to me. And I will say it really crushed my confidence about even dressing myself. So, these are all the things that happen. And these are all, frankly, my mistakes. Like these are on me. So these are the lessons learned. Get payment up front, test your tech, and always dress like even more like dressy than you think you need to. It doesn't come natural to me. And this is why I pay somebody good money to pick out my outfits and tell me what I should wear to different events because it doesn't come natural. So get the professionals involved. Lesson learned for me. Get the professionals involved. They'll do better for you on the things that you don't have a strength around. Okay, here's another one. So I feel like this is like a counseling session. I should probably be paying you to listen to this. Like, hopefully this is interesting. And maybe you relate to some of these. I hope that you do. And if you've been beating yourself up about them, like here's somebody who I am a sales professional and I am very good at what I do, but I make mistakes too, just like everybody else. Like Natalie's episode that was so great about everybody's a mess. And she talks about like her own things that are, messy in her life. And like we all have these. So instead of hold yourself back from going out and getting that next sale because you feel like you've dropped the ball or you've made a mistake, it's okay. We all recover from these. We all have them. Okay, so here's another one. Years ago, I was teaching a live workshop. It was one of my first live workshops that I put on after I started Sales Maven. And it was a mixed crowd, male, female, and which is not normal for me. Like I tend to, I market to female business owners because I love working with women. I don't exclude men by any stretch of the imagination. And I still, to this day, I still have some male clients. I don't market to them because I like working with women. And this was earlier on in my business, so I wasn't as clear in my marketing. So it was a mixed room, male, female. And there was a guy in the room who I was teaching a concept. And during the break, he had asked a question. And I said, that is such a great question. And it is so relevant to what I'm going to be teaching this afternoon. Would it be okay if I called you up and demonstrated the concept using the example of what we just did? And he said yes. So I was trying to create safety by asking permission, which I think is really important. And so we came back from the break. I called him up. I explained the concept and in the room with him and using him as the demonstration. Now, the objective here was to teach a concept around, it's called psychogeography. It's something that I teach when I teach the power of the body language in sales. And so I was teaching this psychogeography and sharing this example and, thanked him. He came up to me after the training and ended up hiring me to do some private coaching with him. He wanted to be a VIP client. So as I tell all of my clients, he's ready to pay me money. I took the money. We, got scheduled for his VIP day and I was really excited about it. And then about a week later, this was before his VIP day, but about a week later, I saw this post that he had put out on social media. And he talked about how he had been taken advantage of by somebody who had a deep understanding of neurolinguistic programming. And this person had manipulated him into hiring him, like spending thousands of dollars that he didn't have. So I'm reading this post and I'm going like, is this me? Is he talking about me? Like, could he possibly be talking about me? Like, what? So I thought about it for a while and like, how was I going to handle this? Like, I certainly didn't want, the idea behind neurolinguistic programming is not about manipulating people into things. It's about adding flexibility to your behavior. Can you use it to be manipulative? Of course, you can use most things for good or bad. It's how you use them. I make a conscious effort. I even teach when I'm teaching concepts about please use this with a high level of integrity. So I decide I'm going to reach out to him and just check in and see. So I did. I reached out to him and I said, I saw this post and I just wanted to check to see, like, were you, is this about me? And if so, can we have a conversation? So we end up having a conversation. He lets me know, yes, he felt very taken advantage of and felt like I manipulated him into spending thousands of dollars with me. And he doesn't have thousands of dollars and he wants to know what I'm going to do about it. So I say, let me take some time to think about it and I will get back with you. And all I can think is, even knowing that I did not do anything that was manipulative, I felt really good about our interaction, but he didn't feel good. So there's a problem there. And I started asking myself, like, could I possibly coach somebody who felt like they were being taken advantage of, like at the start of working with me? So I just send him a full refund and I send him a message explaining that, I want to take responsibility for the part that I played in this and that I apologize, that I wish him well, and that I have issued a full refund to him, and that will bring our business to a close at this point. I think now that I'm saying this, now that I'm thinking about this, he actually had started doing some coaching with me. So I had actually already delivered on some of the coaching, but I went ahead and just refunded 100% of his money, which he then thanked me and then came back and said, can I sign up for this other thing with you? And I was thinking, now, why would he sign up for something else with me if he'd already written this like huge scathing, like, email about me. And again, I was kind of in this place of like, oh, I really want to like try to make things right. So I said, okay. So he instantly paid me back a bunch of money for like a totally different course, which I thought, okay, so interesting. And then it just continued to go downhill from there, frankly. So some other things happened. He ended up sending me a bunch of messages, apologizing, saying that, you know, he had met with a counselor and they'd helped him see that, you know, he was taking something out on me that didn't have anything to do with me and a situation from his past. And then he started sending me other messages that kind of started to go into this like really uncomfortable place. Like, so here's the lesson learned. When somebody has red flags like this, it is totally okay to turn that business away. And as a matter of fact, lesson learned, I do turn business away now. If I get an inkling that somebody is not going to be coachable, or if I think that in any way this person is going to come back and feel, you know, unappreciated or just not feel good about working with me, I bless and release people. I bless and release people all the time. I still have amazing clients. So I don't mean to imply like that I'm just turning away business left and right. I'm not. But at the same time, I do, in a nice way, let people know I'm not a good fit for you. I'm going to decline working with you. As a matter of fact, it wasn't too long ago where I just said to somebody, you know, after hearing what you've shared with me, I get a sense I'm not a good fit. So I'm going to decline participating in moving forward in this project with you. But thank you so much for the opportunity and I wish you well. And that was it. So this is what I've learned from that one. The lesson learned, it's okay to bless and release people. And it's also okay that, you know, if something goes wrong, you decide, does it make sense for you to give money back to somebody? You know, you have to decide that for yourself. For me, I felt like I did the right thing. And I should have never allowed for him to sign up for anything else with me again. And should have just said like, we're done and be okay with it. So that was my lesson learned on that one. Okay. Here's the last one I'm going to share, and then we're going to wrap up this episode of, you know, Nikki's greatest sales fails. The last one was, and I'm going to share this one because maybe you can relate to this. A couple years ago, or maybe it was a year ago, I had done some planning and decided I was going to put out this offer out into the marketplace. And I was really excited about it. I felt like based on some feedback from some clients that people were going to, this was going to be like a kind of a no-brainer, like an easy yes offer to do something with me. And it involved some private coaching. And I let people know about it. It felt like it was pretty publicized, frankly, like in my community and the people that I'm connected with, that people knew about this offer, and put it out there, you know, did my usual thing that I do to promote stuff, and nobody signed up for it. Now, normally that's not a huge deal, but like it happens, right? It doesn't happen often, but it's happened multiple times where I've put offers out and nobody signed up for them. In this particular one, it felt more public because I was in a particular location where other people were, and they were asking like, what are you doing? Aren't you teaching a class today? And, you know, like people were asking me, and I was feeling really embarrassed. Like I was embarrassed to have to say, nobody signed up for my offer. And I just want to say, like, because sometimes people think, oh, well, you're good at sales. So obviously, you know, you can sell anything and everybody is going to sign up for the stuff that you put out in the market. And that is not true. And I share this one because I still am willing to put out offers and have nobody sign up for them. I have learned it's okay. I love to test things in the market. I love to test to see, what does my community really want? The people who follow me. And if nobody signs up for it, it's totally okay. I've come to a place, especially in this last year, where I'm like, hey, I'm just going to try things out. And I've tried some things out that have been wild, unbelievable successes that took me like 2 days to put together. And I've tried some things out that I've spent weeks preparing for and had nobody sign up for. So be willing to test it. That's my lesson learned. It's a lesson I take away. As a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with somebody not too long ago, and she was like, I'm just so surprised, Nikki, that, you don't plan out these huge launches. Like, you have an idea and you just put it out into the market and see if people buy. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's been a great lesson for me to just say, like, does anybody want this? And if not, okay, I'll go back to like my core things, but sometimes it's nice to test. So I share that story in case that gives you permission to like test something and not put it out there because you're afraid if nobody signs up, you're going to be embarrassed. Just think like, hey, Nikki does it all the time and it's okay. Like, sometimes people sign up. Sometimes I fill, a workshop. Sometimes I fill a course. Sometimes I oversell things, like have more people signed up for it than I even have spots for. And other times it's crickets. So, that's all right. It happens. Sales fail, lesson learned, keep going, keep putting offers out there. You just never know what's going to be that thing that really lights a fire, is the right time at the right price, for that person, and the right person who's in that place ready to take action with you. So, okay, those are my sales fails. I hope by hearing them, it gives you some, if nothing else, maybe you laughed a little bit at me and my mistakes, or maybe it gave you permission to make a few more of your own, and or to let go of ones that you have been beating yourself up about, because we all have them. We're all just people. We're all just making our way in the world. And it's just I think it's part of the growing process. I think it's part of business, and it's totally okay. All right. Now, if you haven't already signed up and downloaded and had access to the resources that I've put together for you as listeners, please do that now. You can go to yoursalesmaven.com/Maven. And I have some really amazing resources. I have a full training in there on authentic sales conversations. It's all about prospecting. There are the 17 buying signals in there. And then the ebook on closing the sale is in there for you too, that resource. And the way to get it is to go to yoursalesmaven.com/Maven. Those resources, I hope you'll take advantage. I hope, if nothing else, you just go through that training. If you get one thing out of it that you're able to implement in your business and make money, then I feel like that was worth it to have it there for you. So thanks for listening. So appreciate you being here with me. Love to hear your feedback. So please, and if you want to share one of your big sales fails with me, reach out to me. I want to hear from you. Wishing you continued success. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Sales Maven. Visit us online at yoursalesmaven.com/Maven for more resources to boost your confidence and skills.